Awesome. So first of all, let me start off by saying thank you for having me back again, my second time in WLAN Pros in Prague. So again, thanks to Keith and the entire WLAN Pro staff. Awesome conference, one of the best out there. And just the fact that I have an opportunity to meet everybody, make new friends. Again, please come up. Love to hear everything. Love to run into folks and have these sidebar conversations. So, excuse me. Again, name's Steve Orr. I'm a distinguished engineer at Cisco Systems. This will be the last time you hear me say Cisco during the presentation. I try to make sure that these conversations are kind of industry neutral, and we really just talk about the topics at hand. So, Sam, my controller's not working. All right, so my disclaimer, let me put this up front, and I'll let everybody read it for a second. I am not representing any organization. The views in my wild theories are my own. So again, just take that with a grain of salt. I'm not representing any other organization, past, present, or future, that currently exists or has any secret handshakes on how Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi security operates. So again, please make sure you consult your local IT whiz and not my social media account when you have a challenge. So the discussions I've had over the past 2 days have been awesome. But what I see is the battle raging on, right? Everything that we've talked about, I know we had a couple presentations on Wi-Fi security. It really is the battle between Wi-Fi security, being secure and being connected. You know, one of the big challenges we have in the Wi-Fi space is backward compatibility. There's no other technology that reaches back over 20 years to maintain compatibility, interoperability with its initial technology. With that, you have challenges, right? You're going to have challenges with not just backward compatibility, you're going to have challenges with forward compatibility. So we're starting to see some of that pop up, and I think it was Wes yesterday was talking about how fast the Wi-Fi generations are coming. They're coming extremely fast. They're on a 2 to 3 year cycle, so it's almost impossible to test every feature, every capability. And I know Grav's out here. The Wi-Fi Alliance does a great job at trying to herd all the cats to get them together to test what they can. Again, some of it's magic, some of it's kind of, forecasting what's going to be out there, but you test what you know. You can't test what you don't know. So, what you'll see sometimes is, rapidly changing not test plans, but test cases or coming out with new tests just because things get found in the field, right? A lot of this stuff gets deployed, and for the first time, you never know what's going to happen. So there's a lot of things that are going on in the industry, and we react as best we can. However, this is my view of WPA3. It's one of the things I do. It's one of the cool things I get to work on. But if no one remembers, it's been 7 years. 7 years. That's twice as long as WPA1 was in existence. And WPA3 is still dragging adoption. So just kind of think about it, like, why haven't we moved? Now, there's a bunch of theories, depends on who you talk to. We try to do the right thing, whether it's in the industry organizations, whether it's in the vendor community. How do we move things forward while providing that backward compatibility, right? I'm surprised we're still not being asked to be backward compatible to infrared, right? So I mean, in theory, right, we have to move forward at some time. But I like to look at this from a history perspective. If you think about how we operate in the security world, we try to be proactive, but 99% of the time we're put in reactive, because not only is it industry trying to move things forward, we also have a whole band of folks out there that are trying their best to improve it from a different angle. So I like to look at it as some of the friendly hackers are trying to make improvements for us from the outside, putting pressure on, which is good. But then we have to react to them and get things done for the industry as quickly as we can. But if you look at on the right-hand column, the amount of work that's been done in the WPA3 space since 2018 is phenomenal. Like, what I would say is probably the Wi-Fi Alliance website is probably the most underutilized tool by the community, or outside of the folks that are actually in these organizations. There's a wealth of knowledge out there that can help you kind of parse through some of this. And like I said, there's been a tremendous amount of work in the last 7 years on what we're trying to move forward. Again, if you think about it, we're trying to read the tea leaves, I guess I would call it, on where we think security is going, how we're matching up against the Mac 5 programs that are out there. There's things that are going on in IEEE. There's things that are going on in our customer base, right? So a lot of us as vendors, we have to listen to our customers. We have to listen to everybody in the room on where you're going, what the customers need. So there's a lot of forces at play. Now, jokingly, I think this is what we all wanted when we started working on security. Oh, kind of anything involving security, right? What we hoped for was there was going to be a point in time when we had, and I just point out WPA2 personal only because it is one of those things that I don't think anybody in the room is going to disagree with me. It's broken and it's beyond repair. Now, that's one aspect of it. I'm not saying that we have to throw it out. I'm just saying it's broken beyond repair. So please, again, don't use my social media to ask me to fix it. I am not a proponent of putting any more time into wasted effort. But the thing is, when we made WPA3, when industry came up and said, hey, WPA3 is coming out, it's a reaction to crack and some of the other stuff, we were hoping that was going to be the kickstart, right? The kickstart for WPA3 personal to take off, WPA2 personal to start fading into the night. That was the hope. The reality of our situation is this is what happened, right? But in all honesty, and joking aside, why did this happen? It happened because what I will say in all honesty is people found new use cases for WPA2. What are the use cases? They found out that the same thing the industry asked us, or users asked us to fix that was broken, became the next great boom for WPA2, which was MPSK, personal PSK, which is the thing that was broken that you asked us to fix, which we fixed, which now you want a different solution for. So that's why WPA2 personal has kind of plateaued, continues moving forward, and WPA3, even though it's mandatory, it's just not getting turned on. There's also the concept of, and as I mentioned before, there's forward and backward compatibility. A lot of this, and I know some of the industry orgs get a lot of heat for it, but a lot of this comes from devices that aren't certified, right? So one of the great things the Wi-Fi Alliance does is they certify products for interop. One of the only organizations that does. The challenge is there's a ton of devices out there. There's a ton of consumer electronics out there that don't get certified, that end up trying to get on the network, and they cause all kinds of havoc. If you write to the standard, you're supposed to ignore stuff that you don't understand. So if a station doesn't understand it, it's supposed to ignore it and move on. What we see happening is they don't ignore it, and they blow up. And then, anybody have a 25-year-old water heater with Wi-Fi? No, right? But that's the example I hear all the time. I've got my 25-year-old water heater with Wi-Fi. I'm like, what Wi-Fi do you have that's in a 25-year-old water heater? And you probably should get rid of it anyway. It's 25 years old. It's probably not efficient. But those are the things. We have people in the consumer space holding on to devices for a really long time. How do we phase them out? How do we bring in new technology? Meanwhile, from a security perspective, it only takes one mistake for us to get hammered by everybody going, oh my God, I think security has been the only thing that's really made it in the news. I think when crack came out, and Grav, keep me honest, I think when crack came out, it was actually on the news, and we were like, how is this happening, right? No one's really talking about anything else, but it's like WPA2 is broken, and I think the industry experts are like, yeah, okay. I mean, we knew it for a long time, but so this is the underpinnings of everything that goes on, and I call this like my WLAN Rosetta Stone, because if you understand this, I highly recommend the pro tip. You should be teaching the Cypher Sleuth class. JJ's in the back. She'll be more than happy to take you on. Because if you can explain this without reading the Wi-Fi Alliance documentation, IEEE, good on you, because there are a ton of people that are out there that a lot of this is guesswork. We use hope as a strategy, because even as a vendor, we are not concise and clear on what the user interface looks like to do configuring, and we're definitely not clear on how we tell the network operator, or more importantly, the end user, how they're associated to the network. Anybody have a device that tells them exactly how they're associated to the network? No WLAN-PIs, none of Keith's tools. But there's nothing that tells you. I can't find any device that if I go into the user interface, I can find out the ACAM, the unicast ciphers, broadcast ciphers without some crazy mode or some crazy debugging mode. But as a user, if you were a bank or a banking customer, you pretty much know in a browser what your association is, right? And I'm sure everybody would choose to do business with a different bank if they had their security downgraded in the middle of a transaction. So those are the things that we have to be aware of, and we really got to focus on from a branding perspective in the industry. Now, one of the things to mention, this is important. I've heard, in talking to a lot of people this week, and a lot of great conversations, there's a lot of, I don't want to say it's misinformation, more confusion on what a generation means, right? So a Wi-Fi generation, which is specific. IEEE does not have a concept of Wi-Fi generations, right? It has task groups. The Wi-Fi generations come out of the Wi-Fi Alliance, right? So a generational AP means it's a point in time. It's not necessarily a mode of operation, right? So everybody's shipping Wi-Fi 7 APs. Those Wi-Fi 7 APs are backward compatible as far back as they can to the earlier generations. And I just put 4, 5, 6, 6E as an example here, right? However, if it's a Wi-Fi 7 connection, a Wi-Fi 7 connection is a very specific mode of operation, and I think this is one of those things we have to do a little bit better and clarify in the industry, is that EHT and MLO, and I know those terms have been tossed around a lot, one, they're used synonymously, which is fine. It's very, very similar to what we did with 802.11n years ago when we tried to phase out TKIP. EHT and MLO, so the data rate and the operational mode, are tied to WPA3 in this case. So that's really what defines a Wi-Fi 7 connection, right? So with that, so now we get into the important thing. Now, I've seen a couple different conversations on this, a couple different discussions. Why did we have new AKMs for Wi-Fi 7? So there was a couple things that we tried to fix in the IEEE side that were brought in, and really what we recognize is there's this AKM explosion that exists. Right, so every time we do something new in security, there's a new AKM which causes backward or forward compatibility problems with stations. So what we tried to do is with the new SAE AKMs is trying to do, I'll call it consistent cryptography, where we're matching the SAE group to the actual hash algorithms that were used to the FT, or not to FT, to the PTK derivation. So we tried to do some in-house housekeeping to make things a little bit simpler. And then this AKM24 is what we decided we'd introduce during Wi-Fi 7. There's a lot of debate in the industry. Do we tie security to Wi-Fi generations? What's the best way to bring in security capabilities? And what we've seen in the past, it's not perfect. But from an industry perspective, what we try to do is figure out what that wave is of adoption that Wes showed up yesterday, kind of crossing the chasm. Like, how do we time this so that we can get security in? Because I will share with you, in my experience, there is no one that is going to buy a new AP because it's 10% more secure. 10% faster, every day of the week somebody will buy it because it's 10% faster. 10% more secure, right? So that's why we try to hook into these larger programs to make sure that we have some kind of a vehicle to release those. So on to the modes. So this is the important piece, right? And again, the modes are really about the connection, right? It's about how the device is getting on the network. So transition mode, you'll hear, hey, could we have done things different? Could we have done things better? There's always hindsight. We also didn't think clients, the older clients, were going to act in the fashion that they were, or that the non-certified stations were going to act in the manner that they are. But we tried to create this seamless transition, similar to what happened with WPA2. And again, we've moved on from there and realized how we have to move forward. There is a personal-only mode, specific AKM, 8 or 24, depending upon, again, as I said, 24 is for Wi-Fi 7. You are, and I'll use this term very carefully, you are not supposed to have a Wi-Fi 7 connection with AKM 8. That's the way it's written. In the wild, we've seen some different things happen, right? It is what it is. We deal with it as we can, but it's the way it's supposed to work is PMF is supposed to be required, and it's supposed to be AKM 24 for EHT MLO operation. And then there's this weird thing that I'm going to gloss over very quickly called WPA3 compatibility mode. There's a whole half-hour session on it tomorrow. I don't want to belabor it, but this is kind of industry saying, all right, how do we fix those stations that, one, can't be upgraded, two that aren't well behaved and doing what they're supposed to do from the standard or even from the certification, and not disrupt the ecosystem. I mean, this is really about the ecosystem, right? Trying to, and I use my mom as a great example, right? If I drop a new Wi-Fi 7 router into my mom's house, and then everything in my mom's house doesn't work, I become the IT guy, and then that's my job for the next couple weeks, trying to figure out how to reconnect her devices. One of the key drivers in compatibility mode is trying to limit the number of SSIDs. I'm a security guy, go figure. I'm an easy, let's just go spin up another SSID, right? Take all my old stuff, move it on to another SSID because I don't want to mix my less secure devices with my more secure devices. But not everybody does that. So we had to try to make it a little bit easier to do these transitions. I would say WPA3 Enterprise, probably the most misunderstood set of configurations. I'll say this, and anybody know what the difference between WPA3 Enterprise is and WPA2 Enterprise? Just shout out, anybody? Except for JJ Bueller? No. It's protected management frames. It was the simplest thing that we did. So part of crack, right? So part of crack was de-authing devices from the network. What was the easiest way for us to prevent devices from being de-authed from the network? Making PMF part of the requirements so that we can at least protect the management frames. All we did for WPA3 Enterprise transition mode, again, not a fan of transition modes, but the only thing we did is we took PMF from being off to capable. If a WPA2 Enterprise station negotiates PMF, it should say it's a WPA3 Enterprise connection. So if you go into any of your favorite devices, you go on your home network, turn on WPA2 Enterprise, set PMF to capable. If it negotiates PMF, it's a WPA3 Enterprise connection. That's it. No rocket science, no magic. It was the easiest lift that we've ever had to do from an industry perspective, right? So again, and I think it's misunderstood that the whole power from the enterprise side was we're just trying to add another layer of protection. Enterprise-only mode, again, the only difference with enterprise-only mode is we make PMF required. There's no negotiation. Every device has to do PMF. The other one that's also misunderstood is what is WPA3 Enterprise 192? Enterprise 192 was a request that came in, CNSA, it's Commercial National Security Algorithms. This was a request from the government. It was a request from multiple governments to be able to do something stronger and more consistent. It's all about consistent cryptography in this case, not the mixing and matching that exists in .11 today. But it was, PMF had to be set to required, and we have specific algorithms that we use. So this is where GCMP 256 came in, and I got a bunch of questions yesterday. Why is it called Enterprise 192? What does it mean? Enterprise 192 is the consistent bit strength across the board from the Wi-Fi layer all the way through the EAP method. So why is it 192 bits? SHA-384 is, I don't want to call it the weak link in the chain, it's the lowest security in the chain. It only provides 192 bits. Therefore, it's WPA3 Enterprise 192. Make sense? It's still kind of a little bit of magic. So, but that's the only thing. If you use SHA-512, it suddenly becomes WPA3 Enterprise 256. But the problem was when we designed it at the time, from an industry perspective, devices were having, low-power devices were having problems with SHA-512, right? Trying to process it. So I've also been poked in the eye multiple times. Why is there no transition mode in 6 gigahertz? And my best answer, because it was new spectrum, it was a new opportunity, it was generational, right, from an industry perspective to do something different and to move things forward. So we really tried to further both security and connectivity, giving this new spectrum the ability to move faster and kind of set the stage. Did it work? It depends, right? It depends on your view. It depends on just the process of how people configure SSIDs. They want to group an SSID around 2, 4, 5, and 6 gigahertz, and they say, now I want to have WPA2 on 6 gigahertz. It's a struggle, but again, what I would say is just plan your networks accordingly. If you've got a device that only does 2, 4, and 5, why burden it and put it into the same group as a 6 gigahertz network? You're not going to get the same benefit. Even from an MLO perspective in Wi-Fi 7, right? We'll talk about that in a second, actually on the next slide here. These are actually the rules for Wi-Fi 7. And by the way, I use the term Wi-Fi 7 because that's what everybody uses. This is, 11BE. A lot of this stuff came out of there. But some of the real important things is, if you think about MLO, each link is independent. I can have independent AKMs across every one of those links, 2, 4, 5, 6. They can have multiple AKMs on those links. In order to do MLO, I have to have one set of parameters that is common across all those links. So in this case, say it's SAE, it's AKM 24. I have to have AKM 24 showing up on all those links so that if I have a device that wants to do MLO, it can go and do that across those 3 links. We also brought in GCMP 256. Again, faster speeds. GCMP processes crypto in parallel, so it's a little bit more friendly to low-power devices. And it also is a little faster. It also synchronizes Wi-Fi with MACsec. If you're not familiar with MACsec, it's high-speed Ethernet encryption. We've been doing it for years in the industry. They solidified on GCMP years ago, so it kind of puts us on par, wired and wireless with the same ciphers. So again, here's the other thing that most folks, that we don't explain well enough. So if I have a legacy client, non-Wi-Fi 7, and I connect to MLO, to an SSID that has MLO enabled on it, I connect to one link and one link only. So everybody's got their own pairwise key. However, the group keys are per individual link. Think of it as a broadcast domain, right? I don't want all my devices to be in the same broadcast domain across all those 3 links. So this is where we have a separate GTK per link. If I'm an MLO station, 3 GTK, and I'm associated to all 3 links, I have 3 different GTKs, right? And it's because of that separation in the broadcast domain. So we had to do that for there. All right, this is my quick slide on WPA3 personal compatibility mode. I wanted to throw, now, again, I credit where credit's due. There's a great document out on the Wi-Fi Alliance website, so the QR code, please go out and check it. It's a quick guide. It really talks about why it's done, what it's used for, and again, what it's going to bring to the community. The beautiful part that we can talk about with it is, it simplifies for those older devices to be able to connect. There is a caveat, though, and you have to be really careful about the caveat. If you have a new device, a brand new device out of the box that hasn't gone through the certification, so this is where going to the Wi-Fi Alliance website and looking at what's certified and what's not becomes important, because if you have a new Wi-Fi device that's not certified for compatibility mode and you turn it on the AP, that new device is going to connect as if it was a WPA2 only device, right? So it is what it says it is. It's compatibility mode, not a transition mode. So a station that doesn't understand compatibility mode is going to think it's only seeing a WPA2 network. So again, it's as Keith said, right? Tools in the toolbox. It's another tool in your toolbox. You need to know how the tool works in order to get the benefit from it. So again, if I have a Wi-Fi 7 station, I have compatibility mode, and that station isn't certified for it, that station's not going to connect at Wi-Fi 7, even if it's a Wi-Fi 7 station. So again, like I said, just make sure you know what you have. One of the other cool documents that's out there, and we took a long time working on this as an industry. Again, please go check these out. The Wi-Fi Alliance website has a wealth of information on it. Like everything that we've talked about here, deployment models, deployment guides, everything you need to know about Wi-Fi, and that's why it's great bedtime reading if you want to take a nap. But please go out and check these. It will definitely help you get a better understanding of what's going on in the industry, and those documents get updated all the time. So I use it all the time to sanity check myself, and if there's anybody doing deployments in my organization or customers, I always direct them there, because that way the best knowledge is what comes from an independent third party. That way it's not coming from me. And they get a better understanding of what's going on. So I've got 5 minutes left, and I wanted to touch on 3 things that are coming out. So one of the other cool parts I get to do work with a bunch of really great people across the Wi-Fi Alliance, across the IEEE. There's 3 things that are impacting security that are coming out in the next, I would say 2 years. 11BI, 11BN, and 11BT. So we'll go over them really quickly. I don't have diagrams. I don't have in-the-weeds stuff because I only have a couple minutes. But what I wanted to touch on is 802.11bi. It's all about enhancing client privacy. They're looking at this from a different level. They're saying, how do I prevent the tracking of the device and the users? Now, there's good and bad, right? It's that push-pull between connectivity and security. I want to be able to protect those devices from exposing any personal information. And with those mechanisms that they're enabling, it does the job from the initial spec. The question becomes, now how do we react as an industry from, let's say, an AP vendor and an infrastructure vendor to be able to take all the random and changing frames and be able to apply policy to it, right? Because in an enterprise, we're all about trying to apply policy to end devices, so we've got to have that trade-off between security and usability. 11BN, everybody's talked about the infamous Wi-Fi 8. So 11BN will become, a lot of the stuff that goes into BN will get pushed into Wi-Fi 8. So we've run out of names. We can't call it super fast, super cool. So we're focusing on ultra high reliability, so it's UHR, because what we've realized is we can't go any faster right now. It's very similar to Wi-Fi 7 in the sense that we're still doing MLO, we're doing other things, but some of the cool stuff, what impacts security, for me, is they're working on roaming, right? So how do we make roaming faster? How do we make roaming more secure? How do we do it in an enterprise? And again, how do we get more into that, I don't want to call it make before break, but kind of that, seamless transition. Moving from fast transition to a seamless transition, right? Throughout the enterprise. So that's coming out. We're working on that now. And then my favorite, which is 11BT. Sorry. What we've got, so I'll just kill this now. But we have 11BT that's come out. 11BT is post-quantum crypto for Wi-Fi. So I actually have the honor of working on that working group. And let me just jump right here for a second. What we're doing is we're addressing the requirements that are coming out for post-quantum crypto. So again, it's a hype cycle. We're in the hype cycle. It's 2030 is the time frame. They think that there may be a computer, a post-quantum computer, that will come out to be able to break the key exchange. Again, just to be very clear on it, it's the key exchange that's vulnerable. It's not the symmetric cipher. So again, AES is not in danger right now of being broken. So really what we want to focus on is how do we do some new AKMs? How do we employ the cryptographic primitives that are coming out from NIST? So again, we're moving off of all the elliptic curve stuff we've done is great. It's a transition to what's going on. So there's MLChem, MLDSA. There's a bunch of new algorithms that have come out. So we'll be spending the next probably 2 years working on that, bringing something to the industry. And then as usual, we hand off from an industry perspective to the Wi-Fi Alliance. So wrapping up in my minute left. Again, just be conscious from a security perspective. We do tend to take the heat when things go wrong. It's easy to blame security for a lot of the problems that go on. Again, sometimes I like to think, don't blame the security folks, blame the bad device manufacturers that can't figure out how to connect or that don't adhere to the standards or the certifications. But make sure you're outcome focused, right? I know there's difference between enterprise and residential. Try to make sure we're understanding the requirements before we really try to impose some crazy pieces of policy onto the network. And it's really know your clients. Knowing the clients is really big part of it, right? And here's the one thing I'll say for everybody with clients. There is no mechanism today that tells you when your clients can support WPA3 so that you can go back and fix the network. I had this happen with some light switches from a vendor that shall remain nameless. I've had light switches in my house that were WPA2 only. I bought another one and had to run the onboarding mechanism, and suddenly WPA3 appeared on the onboarding mechanism, which then I had the aha moment to go back and turn on WPA3 for my IoT network. So there's nothing that tells us that these devices get upgraded. So again, just be conscious of it. And then I will leave you with my rant for Wes and show my age on the movie. But look, we've got to move. I really, as an industry, as a community, we really have to not pinpoint a single thing as stalling Wi-Fi 7, as stalling Wi-Fi 8. We've got to figure out how to bring it along, accentuate the positives from it, and not really focus on what might not be working. So with that, appreciate the time. Thank you, Keith, as usual. And if there's any questions, I'm around. So please don't hesitate to come up and chat. So thank you.